Hello, hello, lovely people of LinkedIn and YouTube. So recently we started streaming to YouTube as well. But yeah, happy Monday, everybody. And before I go into way too much random rambling, Philippe, welcome to the show. Did I butcher your name and not say it right in French?
No, it was perfect.
Okay, perfect. Well, Philippe, welcome to the show. And let's start with you just introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about you before we jump into the discussion.
Sure. So happy to be here. Thank you again for inviting me. I was born and raised in Europe, but I have spent the last 30 years of my life here in Silicon Valley. I live here in Palo Alto, California. I actually studied as an entrepreneur. I studied a unique software company here and then sold to our largest customer. And then I was running electronic business development for electronic publishing for Hachette, one of the largest publishing companies in the world. And then I joined Apple, where I spent 3 years and I studied and ran the e-commerce business from zero to about $350 million. Now it's about $25 billion. And then I went into the VC business, the dark side, for several years, being a partner in two seed and early stage venture firms, and invested $43 million and made some good and not so good investments, like any VC guy. And then I went into the management consulting world. So I co-managed a firm that was helping large companies optimize their channels. We had 220 clients like Microsoft, Cisco, SAP, Intel. And then I studied Blue Dots Partners about 6 years ago, where we're obsessively focused on helping companies grow faster.
Okay, that's a good intro. You obviously had a lot going on for yourself in all those years. I especially love the part where you were at Apple. Everybody who knows me, they know that I'm a huge Apple fan. Not the product, but just the philosophy, the storytelling, and like the concepts of user experience and so on. But Philippe, let's go into aligning the dots. What is that? Like, how do we align them? Let's start there, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, I think that, I've been doing business for 30 years, and the greatest and most vexing challenge that I faced, and many CEOs and entrepreneurs and business leaders are facing, is what do I need to do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock to grow my business? I actually happen to believe that there is only one way to create sustainable shareholder value for any business. And that way is to have a business that grows faster than the market in which the business operates. If you grow faster than the market, then you're gaining market share, you're eating somebody else's lunch. And that's how you become number 1, 2, or 3, which is where the most value is rewarded. So I'm a pragmatic guy. I'm actually a physicist by background, and I really wanted to get a clear and crisp answer to the question on what do you do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock to grow faster. And I had a big insight about 6 years ago, which was that the only way to grow faster than your market is to actually perfectly align your business with your target market. It's a matter of alignment. It's a little bit like a mechanical watch. If you start to misalign the gears, it will slow down and eventually stop ticking. If you misalign your business with your target market, it will start to slow down and it will become irrelevant and eventually die. And so I wanted to get to the next step, which is, well, what does it mean to align my business with my target market? And I had a second insight, which is there are 4 universal axes of alignment between any business and its target market. And what's remarkable is that they apply to any business. So I can take a cafe on the left bank in Paris. I can take Tesla, which is just a few miles away from here, or I can take, any business. Those 4 axes of alignments are exactly the same. And the first one is that the pain of the customer and the claim that the business is making have to be aligned. If you come to me, Miha, and you say, I have a headache, and I show you a stomachache pill, you will never buy my pill because your pain and my claim are not aligned. The second one is that the expression of the claim and the perception of what the claim is have to be aligned. So If I were to tell you I have a pill for your headache and I describe it to you in French, I'm assuming you don't speak French, although you might, then you will never buy the pill because you're like, what the heck is this guy talking about? You will never buy the pill, even though it's the perfect pill for your headache. So that's the second axis. The message and the perception have to be aligned. And the third one is that the way customers want to buy and the way the business sells in the marketplace have to be aligned. So if I say, Miha, you have to come here in Palo Alto and Silicon Valley to get my pill, you can say, well, wait a minute, there's a pharmacy close by to where I live. Why can't I just walk there and buy the pill? And then the fourth axis of alignment is actually my favorite one, called I stole it out of the Apple playbook. So as I said, I spent 3 years at Apple. The last year I worked directly for Steve Jobs. And for any of you, if you ever wonder how I lost my hair, now you know. And there is one really thing that I learned from Steve that really stuck with me is I came to the realization that there is one and only one business on this entire planet. And that business, that unique business, is the manufacturing and delivery of delight. When you buy a product, you have a certain delight expectation in your head. As you consume that product from discovery all the way to disposal, that expectation has to be met. There cannot be an impedance mismatch between what you expect and what's delivered. And that's the 4 axis of alignment. So again, to summarize, the 4 axes that the pain and the claim have to be aligned, the perception and the message have to be aligned, the purchase and the sale have to be aligned, and the delight and the delivery have to be aligned. And I'll argue until I'm blue in my face that if you perfectly align your business with your target market along those 4 axes of alignment, you will realize the maximum possible growth rate within that market. And that's how you can grow your business faster. So that's really at a high level what aligning the dots means.
Yes, I mean, I don't think there's anybody who would disagree with that. We all understand the pain, the desire, the communication, finding them where they are, making it easy for them to buy, all of that. But why do you think, Philippe, that so many of us entrepreneurs, and I was also among them, why do we struggle so much? We can see that very clearly in some other businesses with our friends, entrepreneurs, and so on. But when it comes to our own business, we go on that hamster wheel and we just can't find our way off the hamster wheel. What do you think that is?
It is because by being an entrepreneur, you lose your objectivity. I have never met a parent who say, "Oh, my son is not as smart as as I think he should be or he could be. My son is not as pretty, or my baby is not as pretty. He's not the prettiest baby in the world." I think that when you run a business, it's a very difficult thing to do, and you lose the objectivity. You lose your capability to hear and listen and ask the right question. And part of it, by the way, is because you sometimes are afraid to hear the right answer, and you just are better off not asking the question rather than hearing the answer you don't want to hear. And I think that's the fundamental reason.
Okay. Well, and then my next question, now that we know the problem, how do we solve that?
Well, data is the answer. Data is the way to solve it. So we want the next step by, once we understood those 4 axes that I described, then the next question is, can I measure that alignment? Can I attribute a coefficient of alignment between 0 and 100% between, let's say the pain and the claim? And what we've done at Blue Dots, the firm that I'm managing, the management consulting firm I'm running, is to develop some tools and a methodology to be able to measure those 4 axes of alignment from 0 to 100%. And then by virtue of measuring, you start to understand in an objective way the insights, and you understand what the misalignments are. And that enables us to put together a growth playbook, which is ultimately what we give to the CEO and our management teams. And then armed with that growth playbook, they know what to do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock to grow their business faster, which is what we're all about.
So you also have a book. You've written a book. It's quite an extensive book. Is that where our audience should go first? And if yes, then what's the best way to find the book?
Yeah, so the book I was just published is called Aligning the Dots, and it's really a very detailed description of this alignment approach to solve, the golden growth knot, if you will. And there are case studies, and there are examples. There are 20 of them. We also expose some of the tools that we've developed and wanted to make those tools available to the reader if he or she wants to start implementing this alignment strategy. The book is available on Amazon in Europe and in the US and in Canada. And I think it's a good way to start understanding our unique approach. I don't know any other firms or any other companies doing it the way we do. And I think it's a good way to start understanding how we do that. And of course, they can go to our website as well, which is Blue Dots Partners.com. So Blue Dots with an S and Partners with an S as well. .com, and there's also case studies there and examples.
Okay. Well, one thing, so you are a physicist. By that definition, you are more on the logical side of the people, and most entrepreneurs are the opposite. They are more the creative, the emotional types. So how do you help bridge that gap? Because my experience, so I'm also that creative, emotional type of entrepreneur. Unfortunately, or fortunately, through my past failures, I had to, learn the other side and find a way to ground myself and be able to be on both sides and combine them, which is not the easiest thing to do. And I still sometimes struggle with that because it's not like something natural. But what I know from my clients, when we start talking about systems and processes and KPIs and benchmarks and measuring and big data and all of that, well, it's not a really sexy thing, when you go out there and you deliver the message and you get some feedback or you have a sales calls and, it's yes, no, maybe follow-ups. There's something going on, some adrenaline pumping. It's more sexy. Now, how do you get fellow entrepreneurs to come to you to do that hard data crunching, that digging into that, and then also following the blueprint that you give them, because it must have some basis in very logical number-based things, and maybe they just want to wing it a little bit more?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, I think that the creativity and subjectivity aspect and contribution to the success of business is not in opposition to the rational data-driven approach that we preach. And in fact, I do believe that you need this creativity. I would even dare to call it craziness in the Silicon Valley sense. I think you need that to be a successful entrepreneur, and we would never try to temper that. I think that every great company, including Apple, always started with a crazy idea, something that seemed impossible. So that's a critical part of it. When I talk about growth, you have, first of all, I'm only talking about the top line, and we're not focusing on the bottom line. We're talking about growing the revenue. When I talk about growth, you have to grow from some revenue to something else. And in the book, I compare the phases of growth of a business from 0 to 1 million, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, 100 to a billion, and over a billion, 1 to $10 billion. And I compare that to the different ages and the different growth that we human beings enjoy from birth, all the way to being older. And I think that the creativity that you're talking about is really critical in the early days of the business. When you start, the trick and the most difficult phase, in my opinion, is from 10 million to 100 million. That's where it's really, really hard. You kind of hack your way from 0 to 1. And once you have at 100 to a billion, then it's a lot more mechanical and a lot more disciplined way to do that. So if you want to grow and to measure, you have to have enough customers and enough revenue to measure. You have to have a solid base. So I think 50 to 100 customer, maybe a few $1 million in revenue is kind of where I start. And that's where we can help, because then we have enough data to examine. before that, I think you can creatively get there by any way and any imagination, that you can have, and that's okay. And we're not really helping on that phase. That's the creativity phase. That's the beginning. And the methodology doesn't apply because there's not much to align because there's not enough to measure.
Oh, okay, I understand. No, yeah, I agree with you. You can wing your way to a few $1 million in yearly revenue without much of solid foundations and this and that. And really tricky part starts, probably like you said, around 10 million and getting that to 50 or to 100. After 100, there is such a structure already in place that again, things become easier from that perspective. So from a few million to 10, that's, I would say, the first, because it depends on the industry and depends on the business. So it can start with a few million, but then taking that to 100 million, that is the most critical. So you are focused. Okay, this is good to know, because then our audience who will be watching this on the replay, they can recognize themselves and say, oh, okay, I'm in this phase now. I need help. I should better get in touch with Philippe.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is that there's two more comments I want to make. One is that the creativity doesn't go away after, let's say, 10 million. The work we do every day is incredibly creative, because we analyze this data and we come up with ideas and views that we didn't think we would have. And then the second advice I would give to young entrepreneur in young companies, I should say, is that the 4 alignments are really, really critical. You want to make sure you think about them from day one. If the pain is not defined and the claim is not clearly articulated, then you don't have the first alignment. You're not going to be successfully growing a business. It's just impossible. So keep in mind those 4 axes. You may not be able to measure them in a disciplined way as we do, but at least you have to be aware, and there has to be a serious effort to try to align your business along those 4 axes.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, even if you are still at zero, just starting your business, if you don't figure out the product market fit, you won't even do your first sale, or maybe you will do a few sales that will come from left and right, maybe some introduction, something like that, but you won't see a sustainable growth over the next period of time. So yes, absolutely. That's why probably you wrote the book, so that it's more accessible to earlier stage entrepreneurs to start implementing those things. But when you guys, the consultancy really kicks in, is at a little bit later stage.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Well, Philippe, where can people go to what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Well, I mean, the best way is LinkedIn under my name. And they can also go to philippebouissou.com, which is my name.com, or aligningthedots.com. And they can go to bluedotspartners.com as well. And all those things are linked together. So any one of those venues would be a good way to get in touch with me.
Okay, great. Well, let's go a little bit more into your story. I mean, you've given us a lot of value so far. I mean, right now we are at a crossing. Like, this was like very high level stuff. But if we want to start diving deeper, then this interview can go on for the next few hours.
Yes.
So I really don't see how we can stay at a high level and give even more without going into the nitty-gritty details. But yeah, tell us a little bit about maybe, a lot of people that I know are looking to get funded, maybe some, because you were on the other side of the table. And those startups, in a way, they are potentially your clients later down the journey. So maybe if there's a few things that you would share with our audience on how to properly approach the funding.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the first thing, which is probably the most important, which is a mistake that I see over and over again, is that the investors, the venture capitalists sitting across the table, is not going to buy your product and doesn't really care about your product. It probably doesn't really care about the market either. And what I mean by that is that a venture capitalist is raising money from limited partners, let's say $50 or $100 million fund. I then need to make 15 to 18 to 20 investments to deploy that capital. And I'm hoping that every time I make an investment, I'm hoping to make 5 to 10 times my money. So if I deploy $2 million as a seed in a company, I'm hoping that I'm going to get $20 million within 5 to 7 years. That's kind of the parameters. So what does a VC buy? A VC buys the dream and the hope that he is investing in a company that will create a significant increase in valuation over the next 5 to 7 years. So I was talking to a cybersecurity CEO the other day, and he spent literally, it was an hour conversation, and he spent 40 minutes trying to convince me that his product was the best on the planet. And I stopped in after a while. I said, look, you're selling a physical box that, let's say, banks buy for cybersecurity, and that box cost $300,000 to $500,000. And I told him, I said, I will never buy your product. So this is not what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in your product. I will never buy it. I'm interested in tell me why I should invest and tell me the return I'm going to make. And so the sales pitch to a VC is completely different from a sales pitch to a prospect who might be interested in the product. And once you understand that, it puts things in perspective. So I give you an example of an illustration of this. When I asked the CEO as a venture capitalist, who do you compete against? The CEO always lists all these direct competitors and sometimes indirect competitors. And I'm thinking, this person doesn't fundamentally understand what I mean. The right answer would be, I'm competing against the CEO that you talked to yesterday, because you're either going to put your money in that CEO's company or in my company. That's my competition in the context of the discussion with you. And that's just an illustration of what I mean by you need to make sure you sell the right product to the VC. Otherwise, the transaction simply won't happen.
Absolutely. I think I've done well above 300 pitches for my startups in the past, and those were some very hard lessons that I had to learn, that they don't care about the things that I care about. They care about different things, and putting that onto one pager, putting that into pitch versus what I would normally want to present to them was
Yeah.
a very, very huge learning lesson for myself.
Yeah.
Well, Philippe, I have to be mindful of your time. I know you have other obligations going forward, but two things that I really always love to ask my guests. So, number one is, you've shared a lot of the business value with us right now, but can you share something about Philippe, something about the person behind all the business knowledge?
Well, I have done something that very few people have done is I spent 20 hours of my life falling at 120 miles per hour. And what I mean by that is I've done over 1,000 skydives at 15 to 20,000 feet. And Luke Akins is a remarkable skydiver. On July 30th, 2016 in Simi Valley, California, not too far from here, actually jumped from 25,000 feet, which in itself is not a big deal, at least to me. But what was remarkable about this jump is that he did it without a parachute. And he safely landed in 100 by 100 foot net. And I was watching it real time when it happened on that summer day. And it really struck me that this is a perfect example of a perfect alignment. In fact, his life depended on his alignment between his body and the net. And if he had lost that alignment, he would have lost his life. So I'm a big skydiver. I love jumping. I think that this Luke Akins skydive, which has a remarkable video on YouTube, was really opened my eyes to the fact that alignment, is really critical in life and in business and everywhere.
I absolutely agree. A few months ago, I was doing some leadership coaching for a Fortune 500 company.
Mhm.
for a whole bunch of leaders, over 200 of them. And they wanted me to talk about, how can you live a happy life and so on. It was during the first wave of Corona.
Yeah,
And the topic of my lecture was uh, living in a happy life. You achieve happiness when you live in alignment with who you truly are. So,
that's true.
yes, I firmly believe that everything in business, in life, everything is all about alignment. Well,
That's right.
Philippe, my last question is always, what is that last golden nugget of wisdom? And it can be, related to the topic that we discussed or just whatever you want to share, the last thing before we say goodbye.
Well, I think that, and I'm going to go back to the topic of entrepreneurship, which is really dear to my heart. I think entrepreneurship is a journey. I think making money and being rich is not the goal. It's just a byproduct of success. And I also think that every company I've worked with, and I've been on the board of 20 companies, and including two right now, every company is like a child. They are different. There is no simple parenting methodology to help them. You have to treat them as a child with respect, with strong, principles and a good, moral compass. But everyone has his own journey, everyone has his own character, and then everyone has his own destiny. And keep the entrepreneurship spirit. This is what really matters, especially here in Silicon Valley, but all over the world. And I want to encourage people to think of it as a journey, not as an end game.
Would this be similar to don't go and buy just another blueprint because you have to create your own blueprint? No two plots of land are completely the same. And in the same way, no two companies are completely the same. They start from a different resources point, different leverages. So you have to create a blueprint that really works for you.
Yeah, but I think the blueprint, which is the one we have here again, it's all about alignment. I think that blueprint applies to any business. And in the same way, I think parenting should be anchored into some very strong principles, like you respect others and all kinds of principles. But even within that framework and that blueprint, the expression of what the company is going to be, in the same way the expression of what the human being is going to grow into, is completely different. And to me, that's the most exciting part. Is like you really never know who is going to be this little human being that happens to be a company. But I still think it needs to be guided by principles, which is why I wrote this book, and I think those principles are critical.
No, yeah, I really agree. There are some frameworks to follow, just
Right?
like gravity is
Is there?
nature's law, and you can defy it. You can try, but you will not succeed.
Right?
And in the same way, we have certain laws that when it comes to building a business and so on. But then inside those things, you need to figure out certain things that are unique to yourself. Well,
That's it.
Philippe,
Right.
I know you already have a new meeting.
Have a
So
plan.
thank you so
Right.
thank you so much for being
Oh,
my
thank you so
guest
much.
and for
It was a real
sharing
pleasure.
all of this. Well, all the best on your journey and all the best in helping others align their dots. Take care, Philippe.
Thank you so much, Mia. Thanks. It was a real pleasure. Bye bye.
So, guys, as I hope you all enjoyed and liked this interview. I know this wasn't my typical interview when I drill into my guests and we go deeper and deeper and deeper, but it's just because this whole topic that we discussed just now with Philippe is just such a big topic, and it would not be possible to drill into those little things anyway. So I hope you enjoyed this 50,000 feet view, and I think this is really appropriate since Philippe is such a eager skydiver. So I hope you really liked this, and of course, feel free reach out to Philippe. Tomorrow, when I go back into this post, I will tag him in the text at the top of the video, but his name is already there, so you can just search him and yeah, connect with him and see how either the book or if you are at a later stage, how his company, his consultancy might help you in aligning your goals. Did I say happy Monday at the beginning? Probably not. I always forget. So happy Monday, everyone. I hope you're all safe and healthy. I hope things are good on your end. Yes, we have the damn Corona again. Next wave, second wave, third wave. I don't even know which wave it is. I hope you are, somehow managing throughout that. And yeah, I'll see you next Monday. We have another interesting and amazing guest. So next Monday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's New York time, or 12:30 if you're on the West Coast, or 8:30 p.m. if you're in UK, 9:30 p.m. if you're in Europe, and God knows at what time if you're in Southeast Asia and Australia. I never can remember those time zones. So yeah, happy Monday. I wish you all the best in the coming week. Take care, guys, and see you again next Monday. Bye.